Well, the initial stock round, I'm just about to start 1830 here. The initial stock round is an important factor in the game. In fact, in some ways, it may actually determine the whole game to a large extent. Now, sometimes I handle this in different ways. For example, sometimes I just say, they'll know what I want, everybody's going to grab one. That is not natural. That very seldomly actually will happen in a game. For one thing, the Sucky Valley here is one of the least valuable of all the possibilities. Other things, the Champlain and St. Lawrence has a special ability to lay track here, which is very interesting, but not so interesting in 6 players because you don't have the cash to get the Canadian Pacific, who's really the one who handles that, up and running, and nobody else is going to help you. It can make really good money off of that. So I'm going to kind of fiddle around and do some of my little magic dicing and bidding on things. And the way I do this is kind of weird with the solo games because, people walk into the game with different strategies, and I don't want to develop the strategy necessarily right off the beginning. So what I do is, well, the first player, hey, what's he interested in? I'm just going to roll a d6. And he's going to drop a bid on the Baltimore and Ohio for $225. Now, somewhere here, I've got little markers for the different players. Maybe I don't. Huh. I thought there were. All right, well, what I'm going to do for him is put him here. Now, the money that he's just... This is a really questionable move, by the way, but the B&O can be interesting in 6. The money that he used for that bid is frozen now. He can't, and it's not $300, but he can't bid that money until the B&O has been resolved, which essentially means he's not going to be able to use it on any other bids. Let's look at the second player. And now I fudge these die rolls, so if everybody rolls a 6, no, that's not going to happen. So the second player decides, I'm going to just bite down and grab the Sucky Valley. And we throw him some cash, and he gets that. And now, if there had been bids on the Champlain and St. Lawrence, and this I kind of didn't explain, the people involved in that, if only one person has it, he gets it at his bid. Otherwise, the people involved in that bidding will have a quick bidding war. Well, now things are more interesting. All the railways are somewhat interesting. When somebody jumps in for the Sucky Valley, and usually it's a mistake, often the rest of them will just fall. And the way I'm going to implement that is, well, this is 1 through 5. On a 6, the CNSL will go. Instead, he gets a 1, which will allow him to take that. Quite often, somebody will, as a newbie or whatever, jump in and just say, well, I'll buy that. It's not bad. It doesn't have a terrible, it brings in $5 for 20. I've got a lot of money for investment. That can be interesting. Maybe. Usually not. The D&H is an interesting railroad because it allows you a token as well as a free track tile lay. And you can actually start your company up here and run into New York. Very appealing. Let's see what we got here. We got a 5. I say he'll go for that. That seems like a reasonable purchase. And now we're down to just 3 railroads. And these are actually kind of the good ones. Buying, this is probably the most impressive. And I've heard stories of it going for ridiculous amounts of money, like close to 200. Well, no, I've seen it go for close to 200. I've heard stories of it going higher. It's really kind of questionable higher. But let's see if our 5th player wants that. I'd say there's about a 50% chance he'll just pick it up rather than take his risk on the CNA. And yeah, he's going to do that. And really, we haven't seen a lot here in terms of movement. It's very hard for me to instill that dynamic of the initial auction in a reasonable way. There's essentially no chance this guy's going to refuse the CNA. And he will indeed buy it. And what was I doing there? Oh, I don't know. And all we got is this guy got a somewhat more expensive version of the B&O. And that's automatic, by the way. He gets 75 back for that. Now, the other thing, though, is that this was the last guy who entered an auction action. So this guy is going to get the first action. But before he does that, he's going to kick the B&O up at $100. And the C&A owner gets the sheriff pen. This is an unlikely starting situation. Usually the railroads go for more, so actually the bigger railroads are more of an advantage when I play solo like this because it's more likely to fall kind of split up like this. Alright, so our B&O owner, hey, he's got the presidency of the B&O as well. Well, he doesn't have a lot of money, and here's what he doesn't want to have happen. He doesn't want somebody else to get control of his B&O, but he's perfectly happy to sit back and not run the B&O as a company. The reason being that he makes $30 a round off the private company. That's better than he's going to make off those shares, he thinks. He's going to start off by passing because anything he does is kind of a painful decision. Now, here's the question of whether or not you allow table talk, negotiation, etc. I almost always have been involved in games where it's allowed, and to tell you the truth, it usually decreases the enjoyment factor of the game to rely on someone like that. So, for example, without table talk, this game almost always will progress in a certain way. There's two companies available, as far as I'm concerned. There's in 6 players. There's the B&O and the Pen. Now, this guy has the option, without table talk, of picking one of those two. On the other hand, Champlain and St. Lawrence is very, very interesting if you can kick it off fairly early. The guy who owns the Champlain and St. Lawrence Minor Company is sitting right to his right. He's got a ton of money. I'm going to suggest that we have table talk. That's how I usually play. And we're going to test him and see if he is interested in that start, because I think that's an interesting company to get floated. And he is. And to tell you the truth, there's no way this guy wants to refuse a deal to start the Champlain and St. Lawrence. But there's a problem. He's got to be the president of it. And there's a certain level of distrust in that. However, if the guy who's starting it says, look, I'll pay you the $80 if I start it. Well, if the presidency is here, that's no good. And the reason for that is this guy will be holding shares and will almost always be going after, in terms of where the priority deal is, the guy who owns the presidency. That's just not going to work. You can't make a deal like that. The other side of the deal would be if the presidency is sitting here and say they have it split 50-50. Well, if this guy screws the company completely, this guy can ditch his shares as long as he hasn't handed the priority deal over to the third player. So there's kind of a question of, well, if I pass, will you buy the presidency because I'll support you? And he has to now make as far as I'm concerned, make a personality test to see, does he really want and trust this guy? It's for his best advantage. I don't know if it's the Sucky Valley's best advantage. He's going to go with it. So the Sucky Valley agrees to pass. We go over here, and we have $360, and I want to get a lot of shares out. Well, it's only going to take 3 shares each to float the company. That would give us 120. Unfortunately, there are no 120 par values here. So we pull out a calculator, and we got 360. And yeah, you kind of need a calculator, or at least the ability to do math in your head pretty quickly, because some of these numbers are not terribly easy. And I want to see, well, $90 is a good number. I could have done that in my head. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pop one of these out, set the par at 90 for the Canadian Pacific, and grab myself $180. Now again, if you weren't playing with Table Talk, this would be really unlikely. There's no way of signaling that the Sucky Valley owner is interested in you running the Canadian Pacific because you have that. And if you went and bought this without some kind of agreement, without some kind of commitment, you'll just be left there, because nobody wants to help you form a company that you've committed to, essentially. At least that's usually the case. That puts us over to this guy. Now, he would love to have a company, but he doesn't have enough money to buy anything except maybe the pen. All right? Well, there's one share of the pen, and he has $330. He can't quite afford to float anything on his own. This is kind of a problem. We're kind of at the, because this guy would like to get the pen started though. So what if instead of 5 shares, we took that 330 and we could do 82. So he's going to approach the pen owner and say, look, would you buy a share? I don't know how likely this is, but the pen owner does kind of want to get that started as soon as possible, because otherwise he's sitting on this certificate that has no value. He can't even sell it. I'm going to say that deal's not really working out very well for him. Another opportunity, and I'm not sure the why behind that, but let's just say it isn't happening because of my die roll. I think it's very likely that it would happen. The owner of the Mohawk and Hudson, well, what if he has the NYC started? That would be greatly in his favor. He has $310. And he could start it at 100. This guy's going to turn to the M&H owner and see, hey, how about I hold off like he did? And that is sort of positive. I'm not sure there's enough trust to go forward with that at this point. And yes, this kind of negotiation is very iffy. Now, the other option then is float the B&O. And I don't have enough money to force that with $300. So I'll turn to my buddies and say, are you interested in that? And that's not really moving. So now he's in this kind of, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't really want to buy anything. He's going to hold off and hand it to the M&H owner. Now, the M&H owner, he would really like to get the NYC started. He's got that, what do we say, $310. No way this guy's going to invest in the M&H. He may go back. Let's make another shot at this, because he was interested. I don't see much help otherwise. Yeah, there must be some kind of distaste there or something. Well, something's happening, so he's going to pass too and see what goes on. Now we're at the pen owner, and the pen's feeling is that the CP is going to float. He doesn't terribly want to help it. Nah, he's not going to start it, I don't think. Let's see. Yeah, he hasn't discussed either. So He also is going to pass, and now we're back here. He's going to pass, and now we're here. Now the question, of course, is, does he screw the CP owner? And the answer is no. He's true to his deal, and he's going to throw his 90 bucks into play and grab a CP. He will buy a third one. And now the CP is clearly going to start. We can see that almost guaranteed. D&H, I think, is going to make another petition on the M&H guy. No, he's going to make a petition for the pen. Can we float the pen? No. You know, he doesn't know what to do. Buying a CP at this point seems like the best way to get some cash. And we're seeing something kind of strange here. Now the Mohawk is going to try again to cooperate with the pen. Can he get that into that? He's interested. The pen owner might be interested. Let's see what they can work out. The pen owner is unwilling at this point. So now there's another option. Let's float the B&O. Can they agree on that? Yeah, well, he's willing to. He's not so terribly. Is anybody else terribly? See, he's in the best position to float the B&O because he's sitting again right before the guy with the presidency, which means if the B&O collapses, he gets control of it if it's in reasonable shape. I've had a rule in this game with my solo games, which is often the second person to own the B&O wins the game. Well, I don't know what we're going to do here because he'd like to buy something. Can he get support for the B&M? The B&M is a very powerful moneymaker. This is one of the problems. The NYC is not a great moneymaker. He'd love to get it out. But at 310, yeah, I don't think he's got a buyer for the B&M unless he could get a couple of people to. Here's the problem, though. Everybody's seeing the CP coming out. Well, I think he's going to choke down his pride and buy a CP himself. The reason here being, those are going to sell out if nobody does anything. And that's what we're quickly seeing here. Everybody's going to buy it up. This is one of the possibilities always, is that people buy all the, you know, some company just becomes triggered in this way. Usually it's the B&O and the pen that are. Well, the B&O owner doesn't expect to use his money too much. Can he lose his presidency still? Is there anyone with 300 bucks? There isn't, so he's going to buy a CP now as well. Now we're over here, and this poor guy is saying, oh, I'm not going to get much of this. And I started it all off. And we go to the president, who has enough to buy himself a share. And he has now grabbed the 40% he was hoping for. And he's quite happy, but there's a lot of money left. There really is. At this point, there's 240 here. And 220 there. It's enough to probably start it at 67. 240 divided by 67. What about 240 divided by 71? Yeah. And he has 220. That's not going to work. That's the critical issue. divided by 3. Yeah, that'll work too. So he's going to turn back to him and say, look, you want your Mohawk and Hudson's to work. I've got the D&H. I think we can do something really cool with the NYC still. And I think they're going to cut this deal this time. Yeah, they are. So he's saying, let's hold off. I'm going to let you have the presidency. And we'll see where that goes. So at 71 times 2, that's 142. And he has just bought the presidency of the NYC. Now, this is important to him because of the Mohawk and Hudson. He can exchange that for a share of the NYC eventually. I think the 3 trains have to be out for that to be triggered. But he'll be gaining value, essentially, for his private company with the NYC stock. But the problem with that is that it's got to be somewhere either in here or in the bank pool. So if it starts early, sometimes too much of it's sold out and it never actually gets exchanged. Over to this guy. So he's got a few choices here. I think he's going to buy, I don't know, at 150 bucks. He could buy a CP, and that looks safe for a while still. So he's going to buy, oh, there aren't any more. Okay, so he can buy an NYC. He'd like to get his pen started. He doesn't have that kind of money. What's it going to take here? He's got 200 bucks. Let's say 3. That's not going to work. So he's got 150. He could not start it at 76. He could start it at 71 and get 2 shares. He's not terribly interested in getting the trains out is one of the issues here. Gosh. Let me pause here because I'm taking too much time thinking. Well, there wasn't quite enough money between this guy and that guy to start the pen. Nobody else was terribly interested. So, well, the B&O owner bought an NYC figuring it's going to float because he saw the collusion. And now he's got a couple of shares and he's got his B&O protected, producing money on his own. He feels pretty good, actually, in a lot of ways. Over here, well, this guy picked up a couple NYCs. That's a little risky because the presidency's over there. But this guy ended up with a couple, too. So, you know, early in the game here, it's going to be tough. The NYC owner could really damage these people by buying a lot of trains, which the NYC doesn't need. But he has 30%. He's going to take some economic hit from it. And all the people who are less invested, especially the CP owner, will gain on him. So it's not a good idea for him to just damage the company. He wants to run it well and see what he can gain out of it. And maybe he'll be able to keep control of it. Although with somebody holding 2 shares directly before him, that may be difficult. And it's split out all over, which is a problem. What we do see is a couple of companies sold out. Now, the B&O is down here because it's not even floated yet, so we don't have to worry about it. I'll deal out some cards, and we'll start on for the treasury cards for the companies, and we'll start the operating round from there.